Another massacre. Uvalde, Texas. Beautiful, innocent, second, third, fourth graders. As if they're on a battlefield, for God's sake.
And that breaking news, another mass shooting in the United States, this time at an elementary school in a small Texas town. 14 children are dead along with their teacher. 14 students and a teacher are dead in a shooting in Uvalde, Texas.
We've just learned the death toll is up to 19 children and 2 school employees gunned down during their last week of school.
Over 2 years after one of the worst mass shootings that this country has ever seen, 2 Uvalde school police officers have been indicted and arrested. Some people are cheering, some people are saying it's not enough. Before you pick a side, let's look at the exact allegations and then break down what criminal charges have been brought against the former law enforcement officers and how this will likely go down for them in the system. Let's get started. These indictments center around the infamously horrible manner in which the Uvalde Police Department handled the horrific shooting that occurred at Robb Elementary School. Now, as you know, on May 24, 2022, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos entered the elementary school with an AR-15 style rifle and spent over an hour shooting children and teachers. 21 people died that day, and 17 more were injured but survived. The shooting led to massive public backlash, not just about gun reform, but also because of the absolute mess of a response by the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department. Because again, it took over an hour and almost 400 law enforcement officers to stop one person. And he wasn't actually even stopped by the school police department officers, but eventually instead by a United States Border Patrol tactical unit. As I mentioned earlier, only 2 of the officers were indicted based on the response to the shooting: Pete Arredondo and Adrian Gonzalez. Pete is the former chief of the UCISD PD, and Gonzalez is a former school district police officer. Both are being charged with abandoning, endangering a child pursuant to Article 22.041C of the Texas Penal Code. Pete is facing 10 counts and Gonzalez is facing 29 counts. Now, it's easy to look at the length of each of these indictments. It's a 30-page indictment for Pete and a 28-page indictment for Adrian Gonzalez and think, okay, there must be a lot of facts that I don't know, or man, they must have really got a lot of dirt on these guys. But that's not how it is. Not at all. Instead, each indictment is very, very repetitious and says the same small set of facts over and over again. And each indictment is very, very repetitious and says the same set of small facts over and over again. And it's very, very repetitious and okay, you get the point. The only thing that changes really is the name or category of the victim. And the facts are just the headlines that you already know. There was an active shooter in the school. Both Pete and Gonzalez knew about the shooter. They knew about injuries. They knew about access to doors for breaching the classroom. They knew about other potential victims. And notably, they had training that dictated what steps to take in the event of an active shooter situation. So let's break down what this means under the relevant law, because their charges stem really from just this one section of the criminal code, Texas Penal Code 22.041, which says in Section C, a person commits an offense if he intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence by act or omission engages in conduct that places a child younger than 15 years in imminent danger of death, bodily injury, or physical or mental impairment. Here are these categories. We have intentional. I mean, I think we can rule that one out. That's fine. Knowingly. Now, that category is not good for these defendants, and we'll circle back on that in a minute. Recklessly. Okay, all right. This one is actually very bad for the defendants. And then finally, look at criminal negligence. Now, this one is a little tautological in that not all negligence is criminal. What is criminal negligence? It's where it's gross or wanton, way over the top. Well, what is gross or wanton negligence? It actually typically means knowingly. And so we're just right back where we started, just a hair below intentional. It's not negligent, okay? It's not intentional either. It's right there in the middle where someone knows about this horrible, dangerous situation and ultimately just turns a blind eye towards it. Now, both officers were booked into the Uvalde County Jail before being released on bond. So what are the next steps here? As with all criminal defendants, regardless of whether they're former police officers, they will have an arraignment in court, at which time they are formally charged with the crimes against them and then given a chance to plead. Now, as you can imagine, they will both plead not guilty, and then the next few months will be an opportunity for their attorneys to negotiate with the prosecutors. This is an odd situation for everyone involved in this case because both sides of the criminal charges, they know each other. They've worked together. So there will need to be a special prosecutor, and honestly, the local judges should probably recuse because they have worked with law enforcement for years. And so they'll need to be a visiting judge from another area. And because this is the type of crime where there's no intent by Pete or Adrian to hurt someone, but yet the actual hurt and the pain and the damage that resulted from their conduct was so egregious, it will be a hard case to reach a plea agreement in, but it will be pled. Now, just taking into consideration the way that society reacted to the way that the Uvalde shooting was handled, or I should say mishandled, I think it's a safe bet to say that this case would not go well if it were to reach a jury verdict. You know as well as I do that in America, you are innocent until proven guilty. But I imagine that jury selection will be a long, arduous process for a case like this because so many people in the community are so emotionally invested in what happened that day. So let's talk about what exactly these officers would be facing if they faced a jury. Each of these charges is a second-degree felony. All other things being equal, these guys could possibly die in prison if a jury got the chance to hammer them as sacrificial lambs for the terrible things that happened on May 24th, 2022 at that school. Their lawyers can never, ever, ever let that decision come into the hands of a jury. Instead, if they were able to reach a plea agreement where they serve 1 to 3 years in prison and also agree to never serve as law enforcement officers again, I think you could get a judge to approve of a plea agreement like that, and that would probably resolve the case. As far as I can tell, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, these guys do not have good defenses to these charges, unless it's the case that the active shooter training was never given, or it wasn't given to them, or that there was no protocol for this type of situation. But the entire criminal indictment is predicated on there being active shooter protocols that these guys knew about, and these guys botched it. And they won't even be able to say as a credible part of a defense that they were stressed and didn't remember the protocol, because the whole purpose of active shooter training is to eliminate the pausing, the waiting, the downtime, because the shooter must be taken out by anyone and everyone ASAP. Now, you and I might feel bad for these guys that they messed up so colossally, but I feel like the prosecutor is probably correct in saying that their mistakes were criminally negligent. They certainly got a grand jury to agree with that assessment. Now that you have all the facts, you also now have my full permission to pick a side. Should we be cheering for the justice that is being served, or is it not enough? Drop your pro se opinion down below, and please let me know what you think. If you want to be kept up to date with this case as it continues, you gotta let me know. Make sure that you share this video with your friends and that you hit the subscribe button. And if you do that, I will see you very soon.